used cartoons. These are very powerful tools in propaganda war. I had the honor and the privilege of visiting Auschwitz with the Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs and the Archbishop Ron Williams. It was horrible to see what had been done to these people, and I pray that it never happens to anyone on this planet, ever. After that, one of the members of the organizers was interviewing people, and I was asked this question of how do you feel having seen what you saw? And it was heart-wrenching. It was beyond expression. You cannot express how you feel, the horrible way in which people lost their lives. But, and I hope you will allow me, I'm trying to use very careful language. I think the use of language is important, and maybe our MP who tried to express his feelings about it might not have been able to find the right language. But when I was asked this question, I felt in my mind that the people living in Israel today, the Jewish people, are all carrying the history of that. It must have been heart-wrenching for the parents to tell the children the stories of what they have survived or what their ancestors had to go through. And I felt that if that is the history of suffering and pain that you have endured, you would be in a position to be able to understand what it's like, because your ancestors have been there. It's not saying that anti-Semitism is justified, or I'm saying that I'm equating the Holocaust to any other atrocity and loss of life.
You don't think that they adequately, some people, understand the pain of the Palestinians?
The pain of every human being has to be, we have to try and understand that pain.
We take your point. Let me Tom, is that legitimate?
Of course we are concerned with what's happening with the Palestinians, but the idea that it's in any way parallel to the Holocaust, I think is fine. That would be a problematic comment to make when David Ward made that comment. David Ward said that Jews haven't learned the lesson of the Holocaust. I think I would argue that people like David Ward and this cartoonist haven't learned the lesson of the Holocaust. They're continuing to stir up hatred. I hope the rest of us have, and we won't remain silent when comments like this get made.
You see, the point...
Tim, from the cartoonist point of view, yes, go on, Tim.
Yes, the problem is this is a visual image.
Yeah.
And like all visual images, they can be misunderstood and misinterpreted. Now, we don't know if Gerald Scarfe, and he said he didn't, intend to make a connection with the blood libel. Because this has happened, in fact, 10 years ago, a similar cartoon by Dave Brown in The Independent.
So Ariel Sharon eating a baby.
Yeah, eating a Palestinian baby, appeared again by a sort of perverse coincidence on Holocaust Memorial Day. Now, there are many Jews who don't know about the medieval blood libel. That means there are far more non-Jews that don't know about it. And I don't think Dave Brown knew. And unless we know what was going on in Gerald Scarfe's head, we can't say he meant to make a connection with the blood libel. Now,
Rabbi Shokit, can we just illuminate our viewers if they don't know? The blood libel is...
The blood libel is the idea of years ago, the suggestion that Jews were taking the blood of Christian babies and whatnot and using it for all kinds of religious ritual. And it was the blood libel that was used as a means of being able to launch pogroms and attacks against the Jews.
Ariel Sharon, notorious now, but it won an award, didn't it, as Cartoon of the Year?
It did, but that was taken out of complete context.
Right. Was that an anti-Semitic? Do you remember it?
I do remember it
was
very
it
carefully. I wouldn't actually even suggest that was as anti-Semitic as the particular blood libel depiction in this paper last week.
I'm sorry,
however, I would actually... However, I would actually say to you...
In a minute, Tony. In a minute, Tony.
I would say to you
it's a complete lie.
I would actually
suggest
to you...
speak, and then I'll come over to you. Okay, Rabbi Shokit.
You need to calm down your hysteria. I would suggest to you that the idea...
I'll come to you, Tony, for your perspective in a minute. That's how it works.
I would suggest to you that the idea of using the blood libel depiction would invariably evoke sensitivity within the Jew. And if he did it in all perfect innocence, then so be it. And he was big enough to apologize. The editor of the paper apologized. Rupert Murdoch, for goodness sakes, how often does he do that? And he apologized as well. So they perhaps were, at best, grossly naive about the depiction that was carried within that cartoon. But coming back to the general references of Holocaust is to suggest that Jews are committed to the final solution of Palestinians and a blatant annihilation of all Palestinian people. And that's categorically false. It's utterly not true. The sensitivities and the dynamics of everything that goes on within Israel is one
you think
issue.
the language of Holocaust strays into that area?
Can we ask why, then, does the Israeli government pursue policies that have been declared illegal in international courts and in contravention to United Nations resolutions? I mean, if what you said was true, and I hope it is true, and I hope nobody in this audience here today is anti-Semitic, and I don't think they are, and we don't want to be that, but nevertheless, Israel stands to be criticised for what it is doing. Settlements that have been declared to be illegal are being pursued.
Do you know what the definition of racism or anti-Semitism is? When something is universal, and then one particular people are singled out. Like, for example, in the 1920s, the president of the Harvard University at the time said Jews are not allowed in here because they cheat. And when it was pointed out to him that non-Jews cheat as well, he said, "You're changing the subject. We're talking about Jews now."
I don't need a lecture on what racism is or xenophobia. What I'm actually saying is Israeli policies stand to be criticised in international court.
Okay, Tim wants to come back.
Going back to the cartoon, this isn't a stereotypical image of a anti-Semitic Jew. The typical anti-Semitic image from De Sturmer and the British, Australian, American press before the war,
the 30s,
was showing a fat, bloated Jewish banker with a massive hook nose. This couldn't be further from the truth. This shows a Jewish guy doing manual labour. Can you get further away?
I don't have an argument with the nose and whatever else.
I promise to come back to Tony.
The blood part of it.
I don't wish to interrupt Rabbi Shachat's continually, but most Jewish people do not think that this cartoon was anti-Semitic.
Well, I have to
the picture of a blood does not mean blood libel. But I'll tell you this, Rabbi Shachat. When you have Rabbi Avadia Yosef, the former chief rabbi, the Sephardic chief rabbi in Israel, saying we have to annihilate all Arabs, that to me reminds me of the Holocaust. And the only purpose of the Holocaust Memorial Day is you learn the lessons of the past and apply them to the present, so racism is banished from whoever commits it and whoever is the victim.
I have to disagree, because it depends on this gentleman here.
Right.
It depends on sensibilities, because if you're a Holocaust survivor or the child of a Holocaust survivor, you're going to be incredibly thin-skinned and sensitive about such imagery.
Well, we should all be thin-skinned and sensitive about such an atrocity, shouldn't we? All of the human family should be.
Well, then we'd be talking
shouldn't we?
about Gerald Scarf's cartoon every Sunday, because he demonises everybody week after week after week.
Is it possible, Tom? Is it possible to be whatever, it's called Zionism, anti-Zionism, anti-settlement, anti-Netanyahu, but kind of supportive of Israel as well?
Of course it is, and so many people inside Israel are critical of Israeli policies. And fine, have a cartoon criticising Israeli policy. The murder of Palestinian children is not an Israeli policy, and that was the problem at the heart of this cartoon, is that it was based on a lie. And anti-Semitism has always been the dehumanisation of Jews based on a lie. That Netanyahu is one, blockading the peace process, and two, murdering Palestinians.
It's a visual metaphor.
Gentlemen here, hand shot up. And I saw at the corner of my eye. What would you like to say?
Well, being I can totally relate to what Jews have gone through in the Holocaust, because we've gone through Holocaust in our own history. However, it still doesn't take away from the fact that what the Israeli government is doing is wrong to the Palestinian people. Just because it's lesser to the Holocaust doesn't make it right, doesn't make it okay.
So we're not going to get bogged down over here in a debate right now about Israeli policy and what have you.
Why not?
What I am saying to you, because that's not the question, what I am saying to you is there are 2 points to consider. Number one is the very deliberate depiction of Holocaust to be used as a battering ram against Israel is fundamentally wrong, and I'm getting a hint from you that you would seem to agree with that. And number two, the singling out of Israel and the constant delegitimization of Israel on university campuses, in government buildings, etc.
Singling out of Israel as opposed to...
There are so many far worse human rights offences going on all over the Middle East
know if the
that are far worse than what goes on in Israel.
OK, we're going to leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for your contribution.